Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I've got a great stream with a great guest that I think you're really going to enjoy. Now, normally on Friday, we often go and read some political theory. We try to unpack it. The Prudentialist and I have been going through Nick Land's Meltdown, which, is complicated. Some people would call it schizo posting. Today, we're going to take a little break from that, but don't worry, we're still going to be reviewing some schizo posting because it turns out that James Lindsay has lost his mind. Like he may have actually gone insane. You will see. We will unfold this before you. We'll let you judge for yourselves. But the man is not well, and has constructed an entire conspiracy theory, which I am a central figure in. Which I guess is flattering. It's like the guy who ended up shooting Ronald Reagan because he really liked the what's her face.
Jodie Foster.
Yeah, Jodie Foster. I guess it's complimentary in a way, a very terrible and scary way, but one nonetheless. Normally I try not to do any kind of e-drama. I don't find it interesting. I'm not somebody who, I think it's relatively bad form to constantly be picking fights just to make content. I know there are entire drama channels out there and they do well for themselves covering this kind of stuff. So I get it, but personally, it's just not what I want to do with my YouTube channel. But since I was personally targeted by a man who seems to have completely lost all grasp of reality, I thought it was worth taking a moment to respond because, he's saying some things that are, well, quite frankly, insane and should probably at least address a few of them in this moment. So joining me to do that, like I said, here is, of course, one of our favorite co-hosts, the Prudentialist. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I'm glad that we took a break from our usual land acknowledgments for something that is genuinely out there, even for what you and I read.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that Nick Land himself went and commented that James Lindsay was posting indecipherable gobbledygook was pretty hilarious because everyone was like, if you are saying it's indecipherable, then it really must be out there.
If you've lost Nick Land, you've truly lost your marbles and the plot.
If Nick Land is looking at you and saying, man, you have gone insane, then it's time to think about what you've done with your life. That said, before we get started, guys, I want to tell you a little bit about the new program, Blaze Unlimited. It's a new membership tier that's part of the Blaze, and the Blaze really wanted to do something different. There's a lot of people out there, putting out content, but we really wanted something that's a piece of culture, something you can put on the coffee table, something that is, I think, worth your time. It's got some of the best writers on the right today. You got guys like Chris Rufo. You got, of course, big names like Glenn Beck and Matt Taibbi, and you even have pieces from people like me and your favorite frog, the Prudentialist. He's in there as well. There's whiskey reviews, there's things about literature and movies, the politics. It's all there, and it's the new magazine Frontier, and you'll get that as part of the new unlimited package. But that's not the only thing that is a part of it. If you're part of the Blaze Unlimited package, you also get access to exclusive VIP events. You'll have access to all of the content that the Blaze is putting out, and there's even an option to have your voice heard in kind of the direction that the Blaze is ultimately going and the type of content that it's producing. So if you'd like to sign on to this, you'd like to get this periodical, it's really nice magazine with some of your favorite writers along with all those other benefits, you can go to blazeunlimited.com and you /Auron. It's blazeunlimited.com/Auron, and that'll let you sign up for Blaze Unlimited so you can get become part of this and get that first issue very soon. All right, so let's get directly into this content because boy, is it amazing.
Sure is.
Let's see here. All right, so I want to start with a little bit of background for people who are not familiar with, okay, why is all this happening in the first place? Why is James Lindsay trying to beef here? Like, what's the story behind this? So for those who are unfamiliar, and I don't blame you for being unfamiliar, I would not want you to follow all this drama all the time. But James Lindsay was this guy who was a mathematician, right? As far as I know, I don't know all the James Lindsay lore, but from what I know, he's this mathematician. And you obviously have this revolution in the academy. Wokeness comes in. And I believe he was part of, what would you call this? Like the IDW Wave 2 kind of, he was part of this. He and Helen Pluckrose and some others, got together and submitted these papers into left, academic journals with a bunch of leftist jargon. It was something about like, the male phallus being something to do with the weather, and I think he even got like a copy of Mein Kampf through it or something at some point, just showing that he.
Yeah, he's known for the grievance studies affair.
Yeah,
it was him, Helen Pluckrose, Peter Boghossian. This was in like 2017, 2018. But I mean, if you go back to his early career before all that started, he was a well-known new atheist. The first 3 books he ever wrote from 2012 to 2015 were about atheism. God doesn't, we do, only humans can solve human problems, ... infinity plus God equals folly, and everyone is wrong about God. And then sort of you get after this is where he gets sort of his claim to fame about sort of being an anti-woke academic. And there's this sort of deep American, but also I guess sort of just like a Western belief that there's credibility in institutions and we should defend them, and institutional credibility is essential. And he does take his own studies and his own academic background seriously. I'm sure that he knows quite a bit of things that I probably don't, or with respects to mathematics or other parts of his, career. But at the same time, when you look at what is about to happen in terms of politics, like any other person online, you can be exposed to things that break your brain very quickly.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, obviously, the new atheism stuff is cringy. This is already a guy who's not just about mathematics. He's out of his field writing books about stuff he doesn't understand, because that's how new atheists work, right? Like, you're not really a new atheist unless you have a degree in something that's wildly unrelated to any grasp of religion or philosophy or theology, and then you write several books only on that topic instead of the thing you're actually educated in. It's a grand new atheist tradition, but like many new atheists, he didn't like the woke religion that was coming in to academia, and so he jumped on that bandwagon, fighting that. That became the new thing, right? And he made a name for himself, not only doing these grievance study stuff, but he started putting together these genealogies of kind of critical theory and extolling the different, or rather just explaining and diving into the different aspects of all these postmodernists. And to the extent where he did that, that's great. I was only tangentially aware of this guy. I knew he did this stuff, kinda. I never watched a James Lindsay video or listened to anything on him, but I'd seen him post on Twitter from time to time, and it was all kind of just the normal IDW, can you believe the wokeness stuff, which was fine. That's good. He would even retweet me from time to time, memes and stuff that I put up there, and that was back when I was like a little PFP Anon account. So I was like, oh, cool, blah, blah, blah. And then one day, James Lindsay decided to like fly off the handle at someone who I was friendly with, Alex Kashuta. He had discovered Alex Kashuta and the fact that there were some people who might not think that classical liberalism was actually the word of God inscribed onto the tablets of Western civilization. And maybe there were some things about liberalism as James Lindsay understands it, which what James Lindsay believes in is not classical liberalism, to be really clear. Like, John Locke would throw James Lindsay down a well, but he does not agree with classical liberalism at all, but that's what he thinks he believes in. And so, he found out that there were some people who were not hot on this. And so he started attacking Alex Kashuta, and I just posted the James Burnham quote that liberalism is the ideology of Western suicide for James Lindsay. And he just immediately blocked me, because this is like what James Lindsay does for everybody. And that's fine. I block people on Twitter. So that you don't want to interact with somebody, you block them, move on. No big deal. But then
I think that was the first time I had ever seen the phrase Pomo trad or Pomo right regarding to postmodernists.
Postmodern right, yes. And that was his first attempt at woke right, but it failed.
The postmodern right. Because that was one of the first videos I ever made commenting on e-drama, and I had sort of called him like a Girondin from like the French Revolution. These sort of, we're not the Jacobins, but we're also kind of on board with a lot of the things they believe in and want to do some moderation, but we're also really war hawkish. And I'm not the only person who's made that comparison. But at the same time, him and a lot of the people in the IDW are, parts of what would probably be called respectable liberal academic society prior to the Great Awakening. And now they're kind of seeing the logical conclusions of their ideologies come home to roost. And if anyone who wants to push back in a rightward direction or even explore a different avenue other than, say, the classical liberalism will save us, type of politics from the early 2010s to maybe 2016, 17, That clearly is too far for them. That is a bridge too far. And I think that your piece on the neocon cycle, this constant, things keep moving leftward, so we have to push out anyone further to the right of us, is kind of a good example of what we see here. And again, James Lindsay being a sort of a new atheist and sees things the way that only a new atheist can. He's kind of got a very limited epistemological framework. I think that leads to seeing someone like Alex Kashuta, who goes to church and is a proponent for family, as well as other people on the right. I'm also blocked by James Lindsay, so I mean, who cares? But like, it does illustrate. But it illustrates a certain point. Is just that when all you have is a hammer and all you're going to see is a nail, what kills me about all of this is that a man who probably despises right wingers more than he does left wingers, and he has said this on the record, that he fears, a swing to the right more than he does really the woke left. That he will go to these TPUSA pastor conferences.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, sir, you've written 3 books about why God isn't real and how human rationalism can solve all problems. But now you're supposed to talk to, these evangelical or non-denominational pastors about the Gnosticism of the woke, or the religiosity of the wokeness. And again, it does, I think, highlight a significant flaw in his thinking that, all things have to be framed within a religious kind of rationalist framework, that like religion bad, clearly, we can overcome these sort of things, sort of like the demons in a world of darkness or something like that, a la Dawkins and Sagan.
Yeah, the fact that the conservative movement elevated this guy at all is just insane, right? It's like the same thing that happens with Bill Maher, and that happened with what's the other insufferable new atheist, Sam Harris. These guys were like, welcome to, look at all the smart things. They're on our team. They hate the wokeness. They're just like us, blah, blah, blah. Actually, no, they hate you way more. They're way more scared of you. James Lindsay is just Sam Harris. That's it. That's all he is. Like it's, yeah. And it's the same situation for some reason. Like you said, guys like Charlie Kirk are like, this is the guy we want to model for Christian leaders, is this guy who hates them. And James Lindsay has been very clear that he hates religion. He specifically hates Christianity. He really hates people on the right wing. He thinks they are much worse than people on the left wing and are very dangerous. He's been very clear about all of this. None of this is hesitation. None of this is in any way vague. You can find all of these tweets and quotes, and it's all out there. He's been all extremely clear about it. He is a bigot who hates Christianity, wants to see it destroyed, hates people on the right, fears them, thinks that they need to be completely controlled and locked away. And that's exactly what he tried to do, right? Like you said, it's part of the neocon cycle. Oh, I got pushed out of the left because the left got slightly too crazy. Well, now I have to be on the right, but I hate the right. So actually, I'm just going to gatekeep the right. I'm going to transform the right. I'm going to turn the right into the kind of left I wanted, and that got away from me. And that's all there is to it. That's all James Lindsay is doing. So when he's inventing terms like the postmodern right or the woke right, he's just saying people who are actually right wing, because I'm actually left wing and I wanted to say left wing, but the left actually just invalidated the ground under which I stood, the thing I had built my career and my reputation on. So now I have to hang out with these guys, even though I completely loathe them. But people kept buying into it. And so every once in a while, even though I was blocked, Lindsay would like shoot out these, like once every like couple months, he would spurg out and like scream at me from behind a block. I didn't know anything what was going on to him. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on to them. It's just something he would do every few months. People would send me screenshots. Hey, James Lindsay's at it again. He's spurging out at you. Okay, cool. I guess that's what he does. Whatever. But it's just a consistent thing. And slowly but surely he built like this entire like mythos around me. Like I was some evil agent that was subverting the right, even though that's literally what he's doing. But that said, James has been creeping on this for a while, right? Like he's kind of been unspooling. He's called like Jonathan Peugeot some kind of Nazi. He's called like he's exploded and attacked at all these people, right? Very very normal, well-adjusted people. However, he's taken it to another level. So a week ago at this point, Donald Trump posted a Catholic prayer to Saint Michael, right? Like this,
yeah, it was this last Sunday, so we're less than a week out from this prayer being said, which is a common prayer in the Catholic Church to the archangel Michael.
Right, and so he lost his mind about this, just absolutely, just completely unspooled, and created a massive thread about how actually Donald Trump has been infiltrated by a large. Well, I mean, I'll just read it. I mean, I've got it right here. So let's just dive into the schizo posting. Everybody, buckle up. Here we go. So James Lindsay said, and I have to screen cap all this, guys. Sorry for the screen caps, but I'm blocked. People send them to me. That's all I've got. I can't actually see his stuff. So I've just put together. I've reconstructed the evidence from what I've been sent. James Lindsay says, Operation Michael. It's an operation. Is designed to undermine the anti-woke right. Now, I think Operation Michael is just a holiday that Catholics have, but, maybe it's actually a globalist conspiracy. It's a damn shame Trump has been pulled into this, probably on deliberately bad advice. It's already a live active measure now and mostly unstoppable. Here's how it works. He's going to unpack this for us, guys. But, buckle in. Most Americans, even Catholics, don't know anything about the Archangel Michael except in a very vague sense. I grew up Catholic. Womp womp. Does not know anything about his actual religion he grew up in. Michael Mass was not a thing ever with any Catholic I knew. So he grew up Catholic, but he doesn't know any Catholics, I guess?
Apparently so.
Been around for an extremely long time?
Yeah.
So now Michael idolatry... I guess, sure, will be a big thing for our side. And the theosophists will fill in the details of what it means for most broadly ignorant Americans to mislead Christians further, particularly towards war and violence. Now, I have to say, I'm not big on theosophy. I don't know a lot about it. I've heard Julius Evola wrote a really good book about it. These are the main villains in his theory. There's this clan of theosophists which are controlling the world behind the scenes, as you'll see here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, since it's a dialectic attack, one of James' favorite words, it's a dialectic attack. The dialectic is coming for you. The left will use it to characterize Trump as a religious warlord, fitting the worst of the Operation Christian nationalism motifs. Man, there's a lot of operations in the James Lindsay sphere. Because of the left-right dialectic in play in the op, we'll be forced to take a side or dip out into irrelevance with respect to the op.
Okay.
Would you like to comment on any of that schizophrenia? We've got three more posts.
I know. I mean, it's sort of wild to me because historically speaking, theosophy was founded by some obscure Russian mystics and had its founding in America, and it pulls from Gnosticism and Neoplatonism and ancient Vedic texts. But sure, somehow we're going to confuse a prayer of archangel. This makes Q people look far more sane than anything else I can really say on this particular matter. It's just it's like a certain other online personality not knowing whether or not a certain book about theosophy was written by another character. But it does illustrate, I think, a particularly important point here. You are willing to create this grand fiction and internalized meta-narrative about the fact that it was September 29th on the Roman Catholic calendar. That's the feast of Archangel Michael, the leader of the bodiless hosts. And then all of a sudden, and I don't even think it was Trump himself. I think it was just the Trump war room, the campaign account, right. Which I don't think it wasn't Trump personally going out copying and pasting because that's not Trump. But someone in his team was pander, to conservative Catholic voters, which that tends to be the case.
It would be nice, we get all these hey, happy Rosh Hashanah or Kwanzaa from people in the Republican Party. So nice for once for someone to pander to actual Christians, I
mean, Trump on Truth Social even had a picture of the Lady of Guadalupe on his Truth Social account and just said "Happy Birthday, Mary" for the feast of the Nativity of the Mother of God. And it was just okay, it's interesting to see that being pandered to, and it's nice to see some form of Christianity being put out by a public figure, because God knows that doesn't happen every day. But because of all the religions that are acceptable, because it's that famous, in-group preference versus out-group preference, everyone else has to be catered to except anyone who adheres to any form of traditional Christianity in any respect. And because that was put out there by a Republican presidential candidate's campaign, this is the end of the world. And somehow Archangel Michael is going to be the downfall of sort of this like conservative anti-woke coalition consisting of, credentialed, obsessed new atheists like James Lindsay to everyone like, Charlie Kirk and the rest, even though I don't even think Kirk's a Catholic. But I mean, again, it just illustrates that when you are so adamant to define yourself by what you oppose, I always find it funny when like online communists will take that one quote out of context, or like the liberals will always side with the fascists. Like, if anything, historically speaking, James Lindsay, a liberal, is going to happily side with the communists every single time because he doesn't fear them like everyone else would, like every reasonable person fears communism or any other kind of far left ideology. And I mean, one of the things I think is really important to look at is a great book by Rizard Legutko called The Demon in Democracy, where he kind of just asks the question, hey, how come we didn't punish the communists after the Cold War ended? Well, it turns out communists make really good social democrats or liberals in general. And that's why I always find it funny in the Oppenheimer film, where it's like, well, Mr. Oppenheimer, you're a communist. He's like, no, I'm a New Deal Democrat. And it's like, well, there's very little difference between the two. and that's the same thing that we're kind of seeing here is that he is so terrified that someone isn't a liberal or isn't, adhering to this secularized worldview of the nation, or just sort of this 19th century post-enlightenment idea of the state where like religion is not a public mainframe or something that we all take part of. And he has to view everything like it's a religious aspect, regardless of whether or not it is an actual religion that we might recognize, just, Christianity or Hinduism. But instead, the idea of the left being a religion, for him, that's a perfect attack vector because he's a new atheist. But in this respect, because someone did something on a Roman Catholic feast day, this is just too far. And then somehow all the QAnon people are going to rise up and take over every section of the Republican Party as we know it. We talk about schizophrenia. It's like, get a grip, please. Come on, I mean, reality a little harder. Like, you grab your swords. Like, come on, man.
I mean, you can come up with all the explanations you need for James Lindsay's behavior, and they'll probably be right. But at the core, I think it's pretty simple. He hates Christians.
Yeah.
He really hates you. Like, he really, really hates Christianity, and he would like to see it destroyed, and he would like to see it purged from public life. And
it's not rocket science.
It's really not. It's not rocket science in the slightest. He might be working with Christians now for the moment. He might talk to you for a minute because he thinks that he can be a co-belligerent. It might be useful to grift off you for a while. But ultimately, he knows who his enemies are, and his enemy is Christianity. And so the minute he sees Christianity introduce itself into the public square, he acts as if the things he really hates are involved, right? Because that is what he really hates. He doesn't really hate wokeness. He doesn't really hate the stuff. What he really hates is Christianity. And so when he thinks that he can use Christianity to destroy wokeness, he'll use it for a moment. But the minute he thinks that Christians are actually going to assert themselves and have beliefs and care about things, well, then it's time to demonize them because they're the real danger, that the people, as you just pointed out, that he really actually wants to oppose, not the leftists. He is a leftist. He is closer to communists, whether he believes it or not, than he is to anything on the right. But he would like to create this version of the right, which is just containment 90s leftism. So any actual right is showing up, any Christianity, any actual invocation of the good, the beautiful, and the true, these are things that he has to attack. We'll get deeper into the conspiracy theory in just a moment, but before we do, let me tell you about what Joe Biden is doing to attack the Supreme Court. Don't kid yourself. The future of the Supreme Court is on the ballot. The radical left want to eliminate the court's conservative majority by packing the Supreme Court with their own hand-picked justices to get the outcome that they want. Even President Biden has gotten into the act by making reforming the court one of his final priorities before he leaves office. But don't be fooled, their endgame really is to pack the court. At First Liberty, they call this assault on the court what it really is, a Supreme Court coup. The frightening thing is that come January, their plan could become our nation's reality. Simple majority votes in the House and the Senate, combined with the president's signature, could turn their plan to pack the court into law. That's why First Liberty is sounding the alarm, and they need you to join them. If we take action together, if we unite our voices, we can put a stop to the radical left's plan to take control of the Supreme Court. As the 2024 election approaches, we need to do three things. Find out where each of your candidates stand on the radical issues of packing and purging the court. Share what you learn with everyone, and do your civic duty by voting. The future of the court, or preserving it as an independent judiciary, is literally in your hands. If we lose the court, then we lose the country. That's why First Liberty is taking action, and they need all of us to join them. With patriots like you standing for the Supreme Court, we can safeguard the independence of the judiciary, just as the Founding Fathers intended. And by saying no to the left's Supreme Court coup, we can secure the blessings of liberty and protect the future of our constitutional rights for our children and grandchildren. Please go to supremecoup.com/Auron. That's supremecoup.com/Auron to learn how you can help stop the radical left's takeover of the Supreme Court. All right, guys, let's learn a little bit more about how, Catholics are conspiring with a Zoroastrian demon to destroy the United States. So meanwhile, since it's a dialectic attack, remember, dialectic attack, very dangerous buzzword, the left will use it to characterize Trump as a religious warlord. Oh, sorry, I already read that part. Next paragraph. Theosophists have a very particular and evil interpretation of Michael as the bringer of the new age and driver of human evolution, which they explicitly seek to control. He is the bridge, the mediator for them between the figures of Christ, Lucifer, and the Zoroastrian demon of chaos and division, Ahriman, from whom they regard as equally sacred parts of a triune whole. The spiritualism of this occult religion, I want to be clear, this is what he thinks has captured Donald Trump's campaign. It is already completely infused in your children's school through social emotional learning. Now, as someone who has had to sit through social emotional learning training, I will tell you that it is evil, though I have to be clear, at no point did they bring up a Zoroastrian demon, though I would not have been surprised if they did. Which comes from the Fetzer Institute. The Fetzer Institute is an occult theosophical nonprofit based upon channeling and summoning Michael in order to bring in the next spiritual age of humanity, Aquarius. They say so explicitly. Elements of this view will be sprinkled into various various subtle ways, never openly invoking Lucifer or Ahriman, but only their positive seeming attributes to ensnare good believing Christians. You see, Christians, he's just looking out for you. He's just a good guy. He's just trying to help you out.
Words.
Where did it go there? To be taken astray. Michael Flynn's Christian nationalism has been appealing to Michael in the exact words of Theosophists Claire Prophet for years, leading assuming Christians to repeat her incantations word for word in mass groups as a prayer, beyond heretical. So there's some form of Christian nationalism out there that is encouraging its followers to say prayers in a circle to a demon. Am I following that correctly?
I guess he's just assuming that a Catholic prayer to an archangel is the equivalent of whatever this and of course the names that are being thrown out here with no citation needed, Mr. Academic. But on top of that, right? Like again, we're throwing out every buzzword that he knows: dialectic, the Christian nationalism, anything saying about conspiracy, or again, we're referencing theosophists or Gnosticism and so on. And I think that it's sort of important to realize that like this is broad brush generalizations. This goes back to like when he was arguing with Kashuta or Paul Gottfried. Like Lindsay looks at Marxism, for example, as a theory based on like just oppressor-oppressed binary, very similar to how the left views everything.
Yes.
Which, of course, if you want to boil down Marxism that way, that's fine. But I think Gottfried is right when he examines Marxism or what fascism is. And in fact, everything just becomes Marxism when there's two opposing sides. That's why he loves the word of the dialectic so much. He thinks it just means conflict. And of course, like that's his only idea, is to look at this through a religious lens as a new atheist. When all you have is a hammer, everything becomes a nail. This is why everything is about sort of neo-Marxist Gnosticism, a lot of neos in there, a lot of references to religions or Neoplatonist ideals that aren't particularly Christian and, historically have been very anti-Christian, which kind of surprises me that he's on board with calling it that when he is so anti-Christian himself. But at the same time, if he calls something religious, any movement, any ideology, any action, any belief, then all of a sudden he's going to go out of his way to view it like any kind of new atheist does from the 2000s and the early 90s, is to identify a religious vector in society, use the state to oppress it, or call out the state to oppress it, and then to hope that you'll be fine. Now, there is a religious aspect to the left today. I think that that is something that maybe James and I could agree on. But at the same time, James is trying to appeal to institutions that hate him because he's opposed to them to some extent, also because he's white, also because he's male, and also because he's straight, allegedly. And all those things kind of play out in the way, shape, and form that it's like, oh, you're appealing to the people that would happily throw you into the gulag with me. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's going to be, you and I will be thrown equally into the gulag if they got their victory here, right? And so
but he's one of the good ones. It'll be fine.
Of course, right? That's what they all say. We're one of the good ones, you know.
Yeah.
But whenever someone says that, it's like, that's very nice, sir. Now please face the wall, because that's how lefties operate.
That's how they actually treat you. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it's so funny to call everything Gnostic, because he's just pulling that straight from Eric Voegelin, you know, very famous for other phrases like "don't eminentize the eschaton," or he wrote a great book about like science, mathematics, and Gnosticism, which are stuff that is well worth reading. I just find it funny that he's like pulling from a Catholic writer and scholar to do all these things while fervently hating Roman Catholicism, fervently hating, you know, white evangelical Christians, trying to be one of the largest moral majority voting bulwarks in the country. It's why he hates Stephen Wolfe and everyone else like him. So it really doesn't matter where you fall in the denominational or church camp in this instance. He hates you equally. But in part, he's going to go even further into this take and start naming you as one of these like inner adepts of a dark, evil school of theosophists and so on, which is hilarious considering your background.
Yeah, I should be clear before we get any further into this. Neither of us are Catholic, so we don't have a particular fight in this. You're Orthodox and I am Southern Baptist. So, but you know, that the details are inconsequential to James Lindsay. He's got it all spread out on the board. There's a lot of yarn in between all the different pegs on the map. Yeah. He says here, let me finish this part real quick before we get to the other thread where he attacks me directly. This is serious. The cult that controls the world and the left believes this occult religion and will certainly co-opt the right into its dialectical foil version and partial spiritual contamination. It's also covered over with the fingerprints of counterintelligence operations we should be very slow to trust. We must be more careful. We must also find out who fed the side to Trump and expose the bad actors and dangerous fools in the circle. This is no coincidence. My question here is, who is we? James, There is no we here, buddy. This is you shaking in your room. Okay, there is no we here. The voices that they are not real. They cannot help you. He also brings in this response. Someone says, James, please explain. I'm a Catholic and we pray after the rosary and have my entire life. And he's like, oh no, here's a symbol for this evil organization. It's the angel Michael. So that's all you need to know. That's completely destroyed the Catholic understanding. There's a great meme here. I want to share this meme because it's so fantastic.
Go for it. No words, just no words.
It's truly an amazing thing. There we go.
There you
go. The Breaking Bad. Are you anti-Gnostic? Yeah, that's just absolutely brilliant. All right, so here is the other part of the schizo posting, the one where he decides to bring me into this. And again, guys, the drama is not a regular part of the channel, but you know, when someone says stuff like this, I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
All right, so James Lindsay, and again, all of this is screen capped because he's blocked me. I can't see any of this, so I'm just doing my best to reconstruct what people have sent me here. On the woke right, given the lack of access to academia, for the most part, there are only a few professors. Vermeule and Deneen are examples. So very funny. Adrian Vermeule does not like me. He's made that very clear. So what James Lindsay is about to do is group all the people he doesn't like into a basket, even though they in many cases have nothing to do with each other and directly oppose each other. So he's going to list off just everybody he dislikes and assume that they all worship the same cult of demons from Zoroastrianism and something to do with theosophists. So Vermeule and Deneen are Catholic. They're examples. But he says they might be honest and earnest. I guess they get a pass because they're academics, so they must be honest. They're the ones that that must just be misled or otherwise are honest. Deneen or not calling Vermeule out, but he's Harvard, so lol. I guess that's a academic rivalry of some kind. I don't know any of James Lindsay's academic background school wise. Many are in media, though, and to be fair, it's true that the any actual right wing thought has to be done for the most part outside of academia. That's actually one of the things that guys like James Lindsay has made sure of. So what James Lindsay is criticizing here is guys like him have actively gatekept anyone who might actually be right wing out of academia. So there are very few right wing professors in academia. I've met several of them through places like ISI. Very nice. There's not very many of them, but they're nice to meet them. And so he's right that a lot of this has to be done. A lot of political theory and other thinking has to be done outside of this. This is why some of the most relevant political theorists and others exploring philosophical issues or politics on the right have had to do some from outside of academia because it's simply a place that has been rejecting it. And James Lindsay and guys like him have been a central part of that. So he's complaining about something that he helped to specifically manufacture. But
I mean, it's like he should know this himself after witnessing his own little grievance studies scandal.
Right.
Like, if you want to lament the depth and the dearth of knowledge that exists inside modern day academic institutions, like, you're also a product of that. But on top of that, you also have to recognize that a lot of the scholars and theorists that many people on the right, including ourselves, will cite, not only are they like, bloggers or ex-leftists, but also that, there are plenty of scholarly and academic work from, prior to 1945 that you can cite, study, reliably go towards. I mean, this is why everyone kind of goes back to the basics like Plato and Aristotle long before modern Harvard was ever around, that are pretty influential in my own conception of politics. But at the end of it all, right, because Vermeule is not a fan of me either, and I know that there's sort of like that whole like sort of Catholic base, and there's the whole link to Sohrab Ahmari and the rest of them who we're not fans of either. But again, you have to lump everyone together and to attack them. But on top of that, right, we have to put ourselves up. So now James is getting all high and mighty, saying like, because I'm part of the institutions, because I have these credentials, and you don't. The sort of just appeal to authority kind of fallacy, the appeal to these institutions. It's so sad that that you only have these limited ne'er-do-wells to rely on. These people I also just happen to not like. Despite the fact that you can find quite a few conservative professors in universities. They're tiny minorities. They are out there. There's also, I don't know, 5,000 years of recorded human history that I can go towards and cite far better than any sort of study or book that you've ever written or cited. I just don't appeal to the popular liberal consensus. But again, here comes the conspiracy.
Well, and again, James is famous for discrediting these exact institutions. So he's fully aware of how corrupt they are. He's fully aware of how destructive they are. He's fully aware how infiltrated they are. He got famous for pointing that out. But because you're not a part of this thing that I have discredited, then you can't actually be legitimate in any way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It must be said that the recent 2 years ago shift in the voices at the Blaze represent a woke right takeover, part of that operation. Woke right is another one of these words he's trying to get off the ground. I did a video about it a couple months ago at this point.
Wasn't this Neil Shenvi's word to begin with? This wasn't even his term.
I don't even know. That's another one of those guys who's so deeply dishonest that I immediately blocked him. I replied to him one time because I thought he was actually asking a question, and he immediately was just like quote capping it, taking it out of context, saying nothing. I was like, oh, okay, you're just one of these guys, and I immediately blocked him. So
yeah,
I really don't know. I don't know anything he does outside of just being incredibly dishonest. But he says perhaps most notably in the heavy promotion of Auron MacIntyre, who is undoubtedly a fast-tracked 2020 on woke right inner school adept. I would like to be clear that in 2020 I was teaching high school. I'd like to be clear that I was teaching kids about Reconstruction. That was my job. So if they've been fast tracking people in the woke right inner school, I mean, as an adept, I've of course been promoted since then at several levels.
I guess he's saying you were groomed into the position. How the irony is palpable.
Yeah. So So, obviously, my takeover of conservative media, I've single-handedly, what incredible power I wield, living rent free in James's head all day. Let me make the point a little clearer. Thank you, James, because it has not been clear for you regarding the last tweet. The woke right already has at least one major conservative media outlet significantly, but not totally under its control. Yeah, I lead the woke right meetings at the Blaze. There, like, they have the morning prayer to whatever Zoroastrian deity he was talking about. That's just a normal ritual at the Blaze, I guess, is the thought there. They openly celebrate Carl Schmittians run the show there now. This is a fascinating thing. So, did you know that if you read a book by a philosopher, you are actually immediately a religious follower of that philosopher, and they define everything about you, which is why if anyone, James Lindsay read Plato, and that's why he is a fascist, right? He read Plato, he read the Republic. James Lindsay, because he's familiar with the philosophy of Plato and might even cite Plato as being correct about something, he knows that the state should steal the children from their parents early on so that it can form them. James Lindsay believes that 100% because he has read Plato. And those are his rules. By James Lindsay's rules, if you read a philosopher and if you cite anything they say as possibly being correct, then you believe everything they've ever written and you buy into everything they've ever had, and that entirely defines you. So those are the rules. Those are James Lindsay's rules. I want to make it really clear. James Lindsay is for stealing children, and he supports fascism because he's read Plato. And that's not my implication. That's not my assertion. That's not my logic. That is James Lindsay's logic. That is how he understands the world. That is the accusations he is making. So if you've read Carl Schmitt, who is a widely read jurist on the left and the right, and you note that at any point in any of Carl Schmitt's work that he might be correct about something, you are Schmittian. And therefore, you probably are involved in some kind of theophysist, globalist conspiracy to worship Zoroastrian demons.
I think, again, that his hatred for Schmitt, other than he was alive and around and part of a particular regime that is universally hated because the Western world and the United States since 1945 is haunted by the ghost of fascism, and that means never again is all everywhere all at once. And we can't have anything that resembles actual law and order or actual understanding of realpolitik. And so, he has a very boomer consensus of what power is. And in doing so, the idea of rewarding your friends, your in-group, and punishing the out-group, the enemy. And again, we're to dumb down Schmitt as much as possible and to not actually read any of his work, but to quote mine out of context and then to say, oh, these guys are evil fascists. No, not really. And he's building off much older work than that. But also, this is why he has such a huge misunderstanding of power, and he knows it deliberately. I can't even say it's a misunderstanding, because he knows that any rational person who wants to wield power knows that you reward your in-group and punish the out-group to build up your own power base. However, though, if someone does something about it, let's say, for instance, like Governor DeSantis and Disney, or, Elon Musk and Trump trying to help the actual victims of Hurricane Helen versus the federal government, that seems to be, verboten to him. And in doing so, I think because you throw that in there, and then you talk about all this theophysist, Gnostic, Hegelian dialectical things, I think that breaks anyone's mind who is not prepared to actually study it or to rationally comprehend that position to the best of their ability. Yeah, a lot of that stuff was rampant during the Enlightenment. There were a lot of hermeneutical, a lot of theosophical, a lot of sort of Gnostic, Rosicrucian kind of ideals going around during the Enlightenment. And that allows you to sort of see everything as a conspiracy theory. It's very Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code-esque styles of schizophrenic thinking. But yes, for him, the end result is that the way we were going is where it was when I was younger, that late 90s, early 2000s optimism. We were a secular kind of atheist rationalism will overcome this religious in God we trust republic, and we will be secured in that position. But as we know how the left moves, and as we know how all these things go in a certain direction, it will eventually run over you like your roadkill on a highway in the middle of nowhere. And because you're witnessing that happen, Again, that's too far. The left has gone too far. The left has lost its marbles, and we must rebel against it. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you are part of the reason why they got to that position, you're just as complicit in the madnesses that they are today. But again, we have to use this against his real political enemies, which are the same enemies that actual real dyed-in-the-wool leftists have. He might be a temporarily embarrassed progressive, but he's still a progressive, and that has to be reiterated here. But again, because one person out of the entire online right gets a small show on the Blaze, who primarily, I think, in my personal opinion, have a large amount of people who are Claremonters and really love Leo Strauss a little too much. Like, I don't think that means that there are these these dark scheming Hegelian Schmittians out there that want to take over the world. No, I think they just have a moderately better understanding of how the power structure in America actually works, and that frightens James Lindsay, because you can't just poke fun at someone like yourself for speaking what is actually happening, or having people like myself or Morgoth's Review on, or anything else, because all of a sudden opinions that are not within the lovely progressive bubble he lives in can be heard by people. And I mean, thank God for it, but at the same time, to James, that is unfortunately part of some ravaging conspiracy of people that want to bring about the end of his atheist utopia.
And it really is that gatekeeping. It really is understanding, well, I got thrown out of the team I really want to be on. And so now I have to turn the right into the thing I want. So I'm going to tell a bunch of Christian pastors who I hate that actually I'm on their team, so I can go ahead and spread this garbage, and I can push out anybody who actually cares about Christianity or anything like that. But back to our schizo posting here. We got to stay focused on the schizo posting. He says, beyond that, there's a well-developed and well-funded network of activists in the woke right. Inner school. I'll say this about James Lindsay. He does. He understands that Trump is great at branding, and he's trying to mimic that. He's just very bad at it. So he's like trying to come up with the nicknames and the everything's got a code name, and it's it's the inner school adepts of the woke right, but not so good at it. They're going with a variety of activities in building a parallel economy, which runs in a parallel to what many conservatives have recognized a need to do in the last few years. Okay, so there's this bad plan to have a backup plan in case you get canceled. That's all the parallel economy stuff is, right? Like, people who hate you operate the economy. They will debank you. They'll never debank anybody like James, because James is, well, a lunatic, but he's also very safe. He's extremely safe for the regime. He believes everything they believe 10 years ago. He's not going to do anything of any real value. So guys like James are fine. So he's not worried about it. He doesn't understand why you would need a parallel economy. I mean, maybe some Christians who might, I don't know, say a prayer, those guys, they might need a parallel economy because they're crazy and he hates them. But, you must be an insane person to want something like that.
A well-developed, well-funded school of activists and networks. I'm going to do a little side-eye here. I just, really, I'm sure there are. You can look at like the Manhattan Institute or whatever. But I mean, if we compare, say, I don't know, the modern, state, where there are like 700 some odd thousand federal employees that are technically professional progressives, as Garvin would say, NGOs. We've all seen how these bureaucrats and such fund left-wing causes versus the drop in the bucket the right gets. Like, if you were to compare the 990, for instance, of like the Claremont Institute in comparison to like the Center for a New American Century or any other sort of left-wing or Democrat-aligned institution, you'll notice that Claremont is like a drop in the bucket the size of a penny versus, I don't know, 25,000 bars of gold bullion that constitutes the left. But again, some people are realizing, if I network and if I organize and I don't fire my friends, maybe I can actually be something. That constitutes a well-developed, well-funded school of things. And there are plenty of things that you could criticize and talk about, like funding strategies or who they're getting money from. That's fine. But instead, all that James is doing is simply illustrating that actually I'm no different than Rachel Maddow. There's a well-developed cabal of people that are going to destroy my precious grift. And that's all that's all that matters here, is to keep the grift going.
And it's particularly terrible because, we were just on, Dave the Distributist was doing the OGC stream for, to raise money for North Carolina disaster victims, because we know the government's not going to do any of this. which is what all these parallel institutions are actually about, is helping people. But James Lindsay hates that because he wants you to be a ward of the state. He hates community. He hates Christianity. He hates Christian communities. And he certainly hates the idea that they would help each other out. He wants you to be an atomized act of the state. James Lindsay worships the liberal state. He wants it to rule your life. And so in any parallel economies are as much a threat to him as they are to, the actual system itself, because James is a slave to the system. And the fact that we were on that stream and, we're talking about, with Dave, and like, he just can't do certain things because he's working all the time. Because all these people are working all the time. Everyone we know who's part of the dissident right, I'm very, very lucky that I'm in a situation where I get to do this as a full-time job. The vast majority of people like yourself and others who are cranking out content doing this stuff are doing it entirely, as a second job, like I was when I was a teacher. And he's over here being like, oh, they're a well-funded cabal. Like, no, man. Like, these are guys who are cranking this out in the few hours they can get between their wage jobs and, family and everything else. But whatever, James has sinecures, and so he just assumes everybody else does, because that must be the way it works.
Yeah. These
people are organized and funded and are strategically targeting geographic areas to begin consolidating power in an initial plan called regionalism. Some of that is wrong, but some of it is right. Yes, that is the plan. The plan is to actually have people work together and have community. Yes, we have a dangerous plan called regionalism, in which people work together and have real communities and are able to rely on each other and not be wards of the state. Now, James hates that because James believes that the liberal state should own your life. James believes in the total state. He is a proponent of it. He worships it. That is what he believes in. He doesn't like the Marxist construction of it or whatever, but ultimately he is totally on board with this as long as it plays by the rules that he wants. So the idea that you would build anything outside of this, very, very dangerous to him, which is ultimately a WEF globalist plan. I don't know about if they're participating knowingly, probably not. So to be clear, for those following the logic, the call by many people, myself included, which I have made in my book and other people have made very, very much over and over again. I didn't originate this idea by any means, but the call that communities should take care of themselves and people should form families and people should take care of each other and people should prepare, just pulling a random example out of my hat. Let's say a hurricane, strikes your area and the government hates you and not only doesn't bother sending people in to help, but actively works to keep people who are good Samaritans from helping out. You might need to have a certain level of self-reliance in your community to deal with that situation. A network of people who share, like minds and aren't directly connected to the federal government who are prepared to help you in that kind of situation. I don't know. I know it's a crazy idea. It would never happen. We would never live in a country where the federal government would abandon a large group of people in a hurricane area because they just hate their guts, or spend all the money on illegal immigrants and can't help them. That would never happen. But just, on this theoretical situation where that exists, you have to understand that ultimately you're really part of a globalist plan. The WEF wants you to be self-reliant. They want you to build community. They want you to unplug from the larger apparatus that is trying to destroy your life, because it's all part of their globalist plan, you see. Brilliant.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny how we can come up with an Alex Jones style of conspiracy that still misses the mark on a good chunk of things. Like, we're befuddling fools playing into the groundwork that is the World Economic Forum, who have famously said that, I'll own nothing and I'll be happy and I'll have 15-minute cities in which I'm under a constant, panopticon style of digital surveillance. I mean, we kind of already are now as it is, but still, I don't think so, especially when the idea of regionalism for most people, whether it be like the Southern agrarian tradition, libertarians or the like, saying, no, we shouldn't have power that completely centralized, and we want to be able to act as a network that means that if I am in, let's say, unfriendly blue territory like California, I can find friends to either help me find a job or to help me get on my feet as I move over there for some reason. That's what you want. But somehow, no, this is that we have to, all the buzzwords. It's all the buzzwords all at once. It's very much like I mentioned earlier. It's like Rachel Maddow and Russiagate, all those things. We have to make this as scary and as awful as possible. And somehow you, Auron, are at the forefront of it all. And it's really just a disaster because, and it's what kills me is this. If you were a left-wing activist, Auron, if you were a progressive that worked with Antifa or the State Department or whatever, you could probably get away with suing him for libel right about now.
Right, yeah.
Whereas, because you're on the right, that can never happen. But if you were like a Luke Turner figure, God knows you'd be in court like tomorrow over a libel lawsuit over this. But here we are.
They're targeting churches, grassroots organizations, and local level, sometimes state level politics, and running the same kinds of wedge strategies typical of cults, wokes, and jihadis. Small numbers lie and integrate, medium numbers leverage to gain seats, big rules. So to be clear, he's calling people on the right the American Taliban. And he's borrowing this directly from the left. He's using exactly the language of the left because James Lindsay is a leftist. He believes in what the left believes. He believes all the things about religion that he agrees with them, and that is why he's using their language. And the idea that people wanting to be involved in local politics so that they can, actually create a better community is part of cult behavior is James Lindsay's way of trying to scare you from having any actual impact politically. He wants you sitting around, plugging into the state, becoming atomized, becoming detached, having no future, no understanding. He wants you to live the life that the 90s liberals glorified, the one that he glorifies as an atheist, as someone who hates you, who hates religion, who specifically hates Christianity, who hates Catholics, who will go out of his way to create conspiracy theories in which Catholics are trying to take over the world with some kind of satanic prayer. This is who he is. He's very clear about it. You don't have to speculate. You don't have to come up with any kind. It's all there. He says it, word for word. It is truly amazing. Hold on, I've got more memes here. Here, that's a good one. Whenever I'm summoning archangels, which incredible powers that I have.
Apparently so. Yeah.
Become the man that James Lindsay imagines you to be. I guess
become the holy man that James Lindsay is terrified of you becoming. Our friend Nate Hockman put one out that was also.
You sent me that.
This is too good as well.
Yeah, this one's really good. So Lindsay actually got community noted because he said. So, fun fact, there's a statue of Archangel Jermichael slaying a dragon whose body is a nuclear missile outside the UN building. Well, that's not true. That's St. George, I believe, who you have featured on your own wall.
I do. He's right behind me, just above me there, next to Christ.
Which just proves James Lindsay was right. It looks like you're a part of the conspiracy theory.
Apparently so. I'm well aware of the story of St. George, and I got my UN card in my wallet. I'm so sorry, guys. The jig is up. One of the most recognizable, archetypal Christian images of St. George slaying the dragon. And again, for a guy who was allegedly raised Catholic, he doesn't know shit about his own religion, for starters.
Well, which is the most believable thing in the world, actually.
It truly is, because he has spent the majority of his adult life trying to rewrite everything that he grew up with. I mean, we often joke on Twitter that, the modern left is this huge deal of, I hate my dad. And I mean, James Lindsay is a good part of that. And I mean, and Nate Hockman, which he should follow me back. He's absolutely right. The right has gone woke. We've woken up to the fact that maybe classical liberalism isn't going to save us. Heaven forbid that we look towards something that has meaningful proof of life that can solve our problems.
All right. Well, we have about 1 trillion super chats, so we're going to do our best, guys. But we're already at an hour. We'll kind of speed through here a little bit. But that's everything I have on James Lindsay. Like I said, I mean, what else is there to say at this point? The man, he's posting this stuff. This is the world he's created for himself. I hope people who love him are willing to check in on him, make sure he's okay. Maybe help him see.
He has gone insane. Insane, Auron.
I would tell him to, maybe speak some, to seek some spiritual guidance, but that would just put him deeper into the Theophis conspiracy, and so
he might catch on fire.
Right. That's the other problem. Yeah. But anyway, that's what we got there. Before we head over to the questions of the people, or probably more likely the hilarious comments of the people, Prudentialist, where can people find your work?
Well, the people can find me over on YouTube, Twitter, Substack, any place where you can find your favorite amphibian as depicted right here. I also write for the Old Glory Club, and as Auron mentioned at the beginning, if you buy that lovely magazine, The Frontier, I am also in it. Not talking about anything political. I got the lucky opportunity to talk about video games and the economy. So I have some diversity to my writing portfolio. But you can also find me at findmyfriends.net/the Prudentialist. You'll find all of my work there. I would highly recommend that people go read my latest piece on the Old Glory Club Substack talking about Hurricane Helen. So I got to talk about my day job. I work in economic development. I work as a dirty, awful government bureaucrat. I know it's a shame, but I focused on disaster relief funding. So if you know people who are affected by that hurricane and you're thinking long term, feel free to reach out to me as well as read that piece, and we can set something up to talk about how to get your small town rebuilding in the next couple of years, because no one's going to really save you, but your state governments as well as your local planning organizations have a lot that they can do for your town. So that's what I would really recommend that people read in the midst of this right now.
Sounds like you're part of a globalist conspiracy, sir. Sounds like
I know. I'm a part of a regional planning organization. Heaven forbid. I talk with Soros every day. It's such a tragedy.
Remind me one time to tell you about when I was a local journalist and I had to report on the regional economic committee that almost got collapsed because they couldn't get a quorum in order to vote to reduce their quorum. That was one of my favorite moments in small government coverage. By the way, this is what I was doing, I guess, when I was being bred as a acolyte in the woke right school or whatever he called it. I forget already. All right, so Creeper Weirdo says, the woke right is in the walls, watching me. I can't escape them. Tiny Stupid Demon says, remind me again when I send the self-addressed trap envelope to get my secret decoder ring for the Saint Michael, the Archangel, Carl Schmidt, Aaron MacIntyre, Theosophical Inner Circle of the Woke Right. Can't wait. Evan said, you missed the perfect intro. Today, instead of looking into Nick Land's meltdown, we're going to look into James Lindsay's meltdown. Yes, that would have been the way.
Don't worry, we're still doing schizoanalysis.
Yeah. Tismo Prime says, Shuckles for the boys. Lindsay called Jonathan Peugeot a fascist. Yes, I had Jonathan Peugeot after he did that, actually. I choose all my guests by whoever James Lindsay calls fascist. That's actually just my selection criteria for guests. The French Canadian icon carver that talks about fairy tales and the significance of shaking someone's hand. Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, Jonathan Peugeot, just a terrible person. You can tell right from the beginning. Very dangerous. Into all kinds of very dangerous cults, I'm sure. Omega says, or Omen says, I'm currently working on an essay explaining why subversive thinkers need to be rejected by modern dissidents. Glad it's becoming more visible. Yeah, it's hard not to at this point. They're literally posting at the top of their lungs. Blue Wizard Robe says, Angel Summoner. Yes, apparently I have this incredible power. It's somewhat flattering in the worst possible way, but I appreciate that. Let's see. James Lindsay tried everything to avoid anti-white race talk. It's just power of Marxism. The enemy seeks. What does he think Ibram X. Kendi seeks to do with that power? Help whites out, target other races. It's all anti-white. Well, yeah, this is a huge part of what he's doing, right? And this is a lot of liberals on the left. This is like the vouch cope and stuff like this, right? Like they're on a team that hates them. They know that they hate them, but they can't admit that they hate them because then they have to switch teams. They have to do something else. So instead, there's this large ideological construction, and plenty of these people use Marxist language. I'm not pretending that there is no, Marxism, no, especially a lot of, later Marxist language in this, of course, but the idea that this is only those things and has nothing to do with race. Yeah, it's something that, guys like James have to avoid, because if they acknowledge it, then parts of their worldview come apart.
Yeah, and that super chatter is absolutely right. Race is the third rail for only one racial group in the United States to talk about out loud, and if they can't blatantly acknowledge that, actually, no, the modern left is a vast coalition whose intersectional framework is developed and only focused on the disempowerment and basically just destruction of white people in the West, then that would mean that the jig is up and they can't talk about Marxism. They can't talk about economics. They can't talk about class. You see this a lot from the compact magazine types. It's not about race.
It's
a
class
issue.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's a class issue, sure. But who are all the people that they wanted to go after?
They seem to be focused on a very particular working class. They don't seem to hate Hispanic working class that much.
Yeah, it's like it's the Stone Tusk comic where the Marxist is like, I support the working class, and it's like, oh shucks, thank you, and it's the white guy working the oil field, and he's like, oh,
all of a sudden, not
every
that guy.
every time, it's always K. Max McDonald, the guy who sent that super chat, absolutely right.
Thuggo says James is good at some things but doesn't know what they are. Yeah, again, it would be foolish to pretend that someone like James Lindsay isn't educated. He obviously is. It wouldn't be foolish to pretend that he is not intelligent in some capacity. That is. But, there are plenty of intelligent people who are extremely wrong, and there's a certain level of wrong that you need to be a credentialed, guy to really achieve. And James has most certainly, cleared that hurdle. So, I'm sure that, he's done some good work, and whatever good work he's done, then by all means, I support that. But obviously that is not the core. That's not what he, again, it's Sam Harris, Bill Maher, same thing. Like, sure, every once in a while they say something that's true. When they do, that's great. Vast majority of the time, they hate you. They want you dead. And
he has studied the Blade.
I've heard that to be true. Death says Auron's tentacles grow everywhere. Help. Yes, my grand conspiracy becomes stronger every day. The Jackals of Terra Argentium, I guess there. Bit of a misleading title there, Auron. A man can't lose what he never had to begin with. Fair, though. Again, like, I'm sure at some point James was a relatively sane person, probably. But I feel like ultimately he has driven himself to this point. I think that's a fair understanding of it. Tiny Stupid Decent says it's Gnosticism all the way down. Yes, indeed. Philosophical Thirstworms says, this is a provincial and conspiratorial to bring up Israel influence, but it's based and lib pill to bring up Indo-Aryan Theophysist demons. Let's just say if you played Mad Libs and switched out all of James Lindsay's most hated things with another group's most hated things, you would probably end up, getting immediately fired from everything and censored from everything. But he accused Catholics of it, so it's fine. Yeah, that's the same conspiracy, but he Mad Libbed a different religion in there, so he's good. Aramaic Discourse says, all I do now is to respond to James Lindsay is post prayers and Bible quotes. I assume that'll get you banned. He bans pretty much everyone for everything. But by all means,
you should still pray for him.
Yes, this is true. Absolutely. Chandler Barrett says, astrology for centrists really is hitting hard. Sure is. He says, and I thought I was schizo. Yeah, you can't keep pace. Again, when Nick Land is like, oh dude, that's around the bend for me, then you've officially cleared the bar. New Gloff says, the spells of the Zoroastrian demon Auron are forcing me to go to the farmer's market tomorrow. Can Lindsay save me from their regionalism nightmare? Yes, the evil incantation that will drive you to build a community that is self-reliant. Genjablob Flankus, I get to say all the fun words today. He made his name writing buzzword-riddled gobbledygook papers to laugh at his lolcow. Now it's what he does at the same level of Q-tards in tweet form. Yeah, that is very a good observation. He became famous by like laundering a bunch of woke nonsense into academic language and then getting that past a bunch of people. And it's literally what he's doing now. He's just taking a bunch of insane stuff that he's trying to use to smear people he hates, and he's laundering it through a language and hoping that people think that sounds in some way intelligent or elevated, and therefore they won't notice what he's trying to do there. But when it gets this crazy, it's kind of hard not to notice.
Yeah.
Thuggo says, regime apparatchiks always practice credentialism. Yeah, 100%. James Lindsay is not against the system. He's not against the regime. He doesn't oppose anything that's happening here. He just wants it to happen slower. He just wants it to happen at the pace that he agreed with when he was a fan of it in the 90s. That's it. That's all there is to it. Yeah. KN says, mathematics like mathematicians like James do deserve our respect. It's hard to explain to word cells, but without math or mastering foreign language, you're not smart. I mean, fair enough. Again, I'm not. I don't know if I agree 100% with that, but I believe James Lindsay is an intelligent guy. He's done work that I could not do in the realm of math. But that is not wisdom, as James is displaying quite clearly there.
And the point I'm making about mathematicians isn't just saying like he's not, or that it's the reductio ad absurdum bit here. Like you have a particular way of looking at things, and math is probably one of the best ways to look at the world and to understand how certain concepts can work. But when you're trying to apply it, and also with a sort of your political and philosophical bent as a new atheist, I think it limits you significantly to maybe understanding the language or the abstractions that can be brought down from different sides. Essentially, by stripping things of all their particularities or trying to bring things down to raw numbers or raw points of data, I think that you miss out a lot on either A, nuance, or B, the particularities of what makes someone the way that they are and the groups that, constitute certain political factions. As someone who, studies language on the side, I've spent more time learning Greek than I'd like to admit over the last year and a half. And I take classes regularly with a priest not too far from me. I think that it's particularly important for you to learn a language, and especially to know your math particularly well. And it's a shame that we don't do that on a more public level, and that the classics have been reduced to what they are. But it's also proof, I think, for a lot of us that unless you're actively trying to keep an open mind where the roots of things come from and study them out, it can lead you down particularly bad rabbit holes. And to quote the great Dr. Henry Hopwood Phillips, bad theology leads to really bad reality. And I'm sorry, but James has some terrible theology as an atheist, and that means that the reality that he's come to is literally what we covered on this Twitter post.
His grip on reality is exactly what you would expect from somebody who is not well grounded in truth. Sorry guys, I know we have a lot of these, and so I'm going to have to speed run them because I forgot that I'm up against a hard out here. So I'm just going to go down as quickly as possible. Thank you everybody for joining us and commenting. Really appreciate it. But like I said, just need to get these quickly. Robert Weinsfeld says, Lindsay is about a week away from calling me an Austrian painter disciple, and I don't even like to paint. Blue Wizard says, the intellectual poverty of James Lindsay revisited. Which I believe was a stream we did with Academic Agent at some point.
Yeah, a long time ago, yeah.
Tiny Rick, woke right is so fetch. I am not a Zoomer. I do not speak Zoomer, but I believe you.
He is referencing Mean Girls, which came out when you were like in college.
Right. Oh, wait. Okay, wait. All right. That is, I guess, a millennial reference at this point. I didn't, yeah. Well, there, that shows you what I remember from Mean Girls. Kayan, who is more loony, Lindsay or Orthobros who suddenly discover that they care about the soliloquy?
Well, probably both to some extent. They should have their head more grounded in reality, but if you're trying to attack me on it, good luck. It's not something I post publicly about.
Aramaic Discourse, what are our orders, great Catholic cult leader? As the Southern Baptist leader of this Catholic cult, I must say, it's quite an amazing operation I was managed to pull out. Let's see. I'm going to skip that one there just to be careful with the YouTube censors, but thank you, Han. Simpler says, Blessed Saint Michael, protect us from cringe. New Patriot Saint just dropped. He also says, James thought Canadian needs spiritual care too hard. And also says, it's funny that the atheist is afraid of the angels he doesn't believe in. Yes, there's certainly a level of irony there. The old joke, of course, is that an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God and is very angry at him. Let's see. Matt Woodbridge says, can you speak about social emotional learning? He's also doing good work on it, but now anything he said or will do is worthless. I think he'll deserve kudos for a lot of his pre-schizo work. Fair enough. Again, social emotional learning is terrible. It's a lot of the ways in which the school system is currently trying to reprogram your child to basically believe in progressive secular humanism, which is a direct descendant of James Lindsay's ideology, even though he doesn't want to admit it. So they are basically teaching you to break from your parents' beliefs, your parents' ideas, your parents' morals. And it's a way to it's basically a higher order of state indoctrination. We could go into deeper detail. Maybe at some point we'll do an episode on that as well. But that's the short.
Yeah, and it's not just promoted in education; it's promoted in virtually every NGO that focuses on education, childcare, etc. It's a big part of it all.
Gotcha. Yeah, I only know it from the education side. Seneca says, I went to Catholic school, opinion discarded. Like I said, unfortunately, I grew up Catholic, but didn't pay anything attention to what Catholics actually believe is all too often a real thing. Thimpler comes back and says, will you be summoning Michael to deliver a cigar to AA this spring? There is zero chance that AA is winning that bet. He has lost quite convincingly. And I will free him from the horrible dystopian country of the United Kingdom when he comes to Florida to deliver me my cigar. He'll get a reprieve from the Starmer Reich over there. Glow in the Dark says, if you worship the state or state institutions, doesn't that de facto mean that you are socialist? James, stop being the social subversive you say others are. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, again for coming by. It has been a blast. We'll be back to our normal Nick Land posting here next time. But for now, I'm glad you traveled with us on this detour into the mind of James Lindsay. It's a interesting and scary place, but it is one that I felt was worth the time to explore since he was aiming those accusations directly at me. So if this is your first time on the YouTube channel, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe. Make sure that you turn on the notifications, click the bell so that you can see these streams whenever they go live. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, you can make sure to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show, where on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, if you'd like to pick up my book, The Total State, which explains several of the things we've discussed today, including James Lindsay's absolute addiction to institutions, you can pick that up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or preferably your own local bookstore so you're not feeding in to those very large institutions. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and as always, I will talk to you next time.